Hello, everybody. Here, another episode of What Would It Cost Florida with your host, Niels Decker, and our special guest, Michelle K. Suarez, our corporate lawyer. And we're going to have a conversation about all things around what structures are best for someone that is looking into the real estate world. But beyond that as well, some awesome stories that Michelle is going to bring to the forefront through her experience and her journey. And I'm super excited to have her on. She is awesome. Welcome.
Welcome. Oh, not welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Thank you.
Excited to be here.
Oh, welcome. And Michelle, thank you for being here today. Very excited to get together, and you were actually one of our speakers at Path to Profit, and people loved your part. It was awesome. You knocked that out of the park.
I had so much fun too.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome.
Yeah,
I'd never been to Toronto before, so that was cool in and of itself. I stayed a day after.
Yeah,
but I think just the event was so much more than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
It was an honor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's always beautiful to hear. And obviously we spoke about it afterwards as well. And so good. And for those listeners that perhaps didn't see you there and don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, anything from the past, how you got to be where you are today and into the industry. Share.
Okay. In a nutshell, I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I came from a family of entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And I've known I wanted to be a lawyer, among other things, since I was 7.
Yep.
So the collusion between the two was inevitable. I worked for big law, 2 different big law firms and a small firm. And after about 3 years of practicing, I decided I wanted to go out on my own. I thought I was ready. And the moment I knew I was ready was when my boss, who'd been practicing 22 years at the time, made a pretty big mistake in a case that cost a lot of money. And at that point I was like, well, F it. If he can mess up that bad and he's been practicing this long, I have nothing to be afraid of. Let's do it.
Yeah. It was almost like, okay, that was the barrier of like, okay,
yeah,
I can be human in this world as well.
Yeah. And I wanted some autonomy over my life and my schedule, which is kind of funny now being an entrepreneur. I'm sure you can relate. There's no 9 to 5.
No.
There's 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I started Florida Entrepreneur Law in 2017.
Yeah.
So we've been around for a little bit now. And I knew I only wanted to work with entrepreneurs and people that had that mindset.
Yeah.
I felt like a business person that happened to be a lawyer, and I still feel like that today.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride. I love it. We've grown to 4 employees, actually 4.5 employees now, hoping to bring on a 5th. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I think, I know now offices here on the southeast coast in Lauderdale, as well on the southwest coast. And I think that third one is already up and running, Orlando.
Yeah, we have a satellite office in Orlando.
Yeah.
We have an office in downtown Tampa, right by the river. And then this office here in downtown Fort Lauderdale as well. We like being close to the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a common theme there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And your partner, Amanda, that you work with as well. And how did you guys get connected?
So our story is really interesting. I met her when she was in law school. She was, it was her first year of law school. I went to an event that had attorneys that were there to mentor, students, and we connected. And I knew from the moment I met her, she just had this drive, and she was passionate, and she was a go-getter. And so we stayed in touch over the years. And of course, she graduated, became an attorney. We became friends. And then during COVID, we met for lunch. And, she mentioned that she'd been thinking of going out on her own. And I was like, well, wait a second. What do you mean go out on your own? Like, this is perfect. I need a partner. I'm tired of doing this alone. And, what kind of law do you want to do? And she's like, well, I want to work with business owners. I'm like, hello, this is perfect. Yeah. And then once she mentioned, the conversation turned into her coming to my house and hanging out. And she mentioned a book that I love called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
You're my business partner.
You better sign right here. Right
Yeah.
now. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Cool.
She got it. She has the
Very
same
awesome.
mindset.
Yeah, I met and had an awesome conversation with her as well, and a little shout out to her. So it's so cool that to see you guys connected and working together and creating what you have and providing the service you have. And I love too as well that you're so aware that who you want to service. And I know for sure that it's not an accident then that's now continues to where you're growing and how important that it is in business. And for us as well, it's so relatable because we said, let's not go wide with who we want to work with. For us, it's very clear. Real estate agents and real estate professionals, and really understanding what are their pain points so that we can service them to the best that ability that we now have understood and continue to understand by having those conversations with them all the time. So I think that's really cool to hear that as well.
Yeah.
And also just I hear the joy in it because you enjoy being an entrepreneur and then being able to add that value. So
yeah, for sure. It has its highs and lows, I'm sure, like any entrepreneur understands, but
yeah.
I still do genuinely love coming to the office and doing what I'm doing, even if it's late at night.
Yeah.
I love serving our clients.
And in being in your purpose. Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's dive in a bit and unfold what is it that you guys will provide and specialize in, and anything that you want to talk about around that?
Yeah, sure. So we have found a niche with serial entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So we tend to work more or better for clients that, either this isn't their first business or perhaps it is, but they know that this is the first of many.
Yeah.
So we are there for the long haul. We're there for the long ride. We serve as their outside general counsel. So instead of having, to call an attorney every time you have a question, we're there whenever they need us. And we help with the entity formation stuff. Yes, we always get those questions and we help with all of that. And I don't want to say that that's the simple stuff, but it kind of has become more of the simple, straightforward stuff that we deal with. I think what we offer to our clients more than that as a business firm is that we work with them on a very holistic bird's eye view.
Yeah.
So if a client, like just yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of my tech companies and they were saying, listen, like we're starting, but we know we want to exit in 5 years. And so, okay, if you know you want to exit in 5 years, then now we know we need to make sure we're structuring the company in a certain way, preparing documents in a certain way, and protecting liability exposure in certain ways with insurance policies and stuff like that. So we really, we're the boring attorneys that draft all the stuff. Yeah. But I think where we add value is the ability to think through the issues to help protect our businesses as they're moving through what they're moving through.
Yeah. And what I hear in that as well is really bringing out what is important by understanding what the client will require and what their goals and short-term and long-term goals are, and then really eliminating what then could become urgent.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I've got one client, God, I love him. He's been he's one of my oldest clients. If he ever saw this podcast, he would know I'm talking about him. He's one of my favorite clients. We become friends. But, he's gotten better about not throwing things on me at the last minute. But like even just the other day, like I get an email from him. Hey, we're selling one of the companies. We already signed the LOI. Here's the amount. We want to close in 90 days. I'm like, oh, I'm having a baby in 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. And, and I go along for the ride. But yeah, the idea is it's that open communication, that relationship, that trust that we have with our clients where they can say, hey, I want to open a new venture between Istanbul and Florida. There's another client yesterday. All right, here's what we got to do. Yeah,
very interesting, and also a variety of day-to-day for you as well. So that will keep it interesting. That's so very cool. And tying it back a bit to real estate, we've chatted about it as well. And I think a big conversation is like, LLC here and C Corp there and structure, even another level of, I need to be protected. And I think a conversation that kind of gets lost in the mix that I want to talk about is, there's still insurance. Don't forget about insurance.
So important.
But liability can be protected there. Is certain structures the right thing for certain thing? Is it going to be only a property that you're retiring in, or it's one vacation home, and you're not really looking to create more on that? I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah, definitely. We also get a lot of inquiries where people are like, oh, I'm going to buy a property in Florida and I want to set it up in an LLC.
Yeah.
And, they think they know what they want. And you ask them why. And then as soon as they get into the why, like you said, oh, I'm retiring and I'm buying a house in Florida. And so I was told to put it in an LLC.
Yeah.
That's probably not the best choice. There are other mechanisms like land trusts and different things like that, which we don't personally do trusts and estates. We work with attorneys that do.
Yeah.
But that's not typically the reason for setting up an LLC. Now, if you're coming down here and you're buying multiple properties, or you're starting a property management company in addition to the properties you're purchasing, absolutely, that's a reason to set up a company.
Yeah.
And if they're not U.S. citizens or residents, an LLC pretty much is the only choice, unless they're going to be taxed as a C Corp, and they'd have to check their tax laws where they're coming from, whether it's Canada or somewhere else, to see if that's advantageous. But typically, it's going to be an LLC structure.
Yeah. And for the Canadians that are tuning in, I think as well, the LLC, what there is that Canada also does not look at LLC more as a flow through versus corporation. So it almost is looked at as an incorporation. Am I correct on that?
I believe so. Yeah. I have a company from Canada that has been with us for a few years now, and they did end up ultimately deciding to do an LLC, but not before we had about 3 or 4 calls with their Canadian tax advisor and their Canadian trust attorney, because they have a couple companies there that they're migrating some parts of to Florida.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it. I think the most important thing to take away, especially for our Canadian listeners, is you're not just looking at, okay, this is the entity I want to form. I need a business attorney. This is what I'm doing. No, you need a team.
Yeah.
You need your Canadian tax person, your Florida tax person, your Florida business attorney, and hopefully either your Canadian or Florida trust attorney to make sure that we're structuring everything in a way that makes sense from a legal perspective and from a tax savings perspective.
Yeah. And really look at what are going to be the objectives as well. Is that cash staying in one country?
100%.
Does it need to go back? So the cross-border tax account, your work is hand in hand, and then sometimes even the third component, the immigration lawyer.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking of an email I got with this Canadian company, who's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Asking for documents and things like that. Yeah, the immigration attorney, 100% too. Yeah. Your team has to be communicating.
And the timing of that, and if it's visa or not. So very similar to the work of a mortgage broker, property management, realtor.
Right. Exactly.
Really how it can go into almost unison at one point, and you're preparing to work together.
Yeah.
So important. Yeah.
So important. Yeah, you really, it is actually, that's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Because that entire team comes together and each person plays a very specific role.
Yeah.
And if they're not communicating, you could be wasting time or money or both, because time is money.
Yeah. And or having to correct certain structures that you thought weren't. So yeah, definitely. And well, and on that topic, that makes me think of what are some of the things that you've seen that you would say look out for, or maybe something like, hey, that went horribly wrong, and the listeners can be like, take that away from what you've seen or what's been out there. Yeah.
There's so many horror stories, but if I'm going to pick just one, I would say not being properly insured.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about property insurance. If you're talking about a property, I'm talking about, and it depends, right, on the purpose of the business.
Yeah.
If you're running a property management company, okay, you don't have a physical location per se, so maybe you're not worried about somebody slipping and falling on your property.
Yeah.
But if you're communicating with the patrons that are renting your place, let's say you have a couple Airbnbs and you don't have an errors and omissions policy, or you have employees working for you and you don't have an employer's liability policy. So it really depends on the type of business related to real estate or not, but you have to make sure that you are communicating with your attorney as to what is the point of your business? What's the purpose of your business? Who's coming in and out of it? Who's interacting with it? Do you have employees? Do you have independent contractors? Because that's going to help us figure out who you need to talk to in terms of an insurance broker. And we also will be able to know if your insurance broker is covering you the way they're supposed to, which in most cases, if you have a good insurance broker, they should be asking the same questions. What's the nature of your business?
Yeah, it's super key, and being able to, again, avoid the unknown and really horror stories that can come out on the other end of it, and or having to then rush and correct it all. So insurance is huge on that end, and having someone on your team.
Yeah, for sure.
And as we keep talking and mentioning teamwork and having it all together.
Yeah, 100%. And then as far as like real estate is concerned, if they're doing any build outs or working with general contractors, GCs or anything like that, make sure they're licensed. You can look that up in the state of Florida very easily with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, DBPR. Ask them for their certificates of insurance. Make sure their insurance policy is current, because God forbid, should something happen on your property, you want to know who to go after, because the construction company might not have the money. So
super important to be able to cover yourself on that end as well. And what would you say as you went through your career were some bigger challenges that you had overcome or that you could share with the listeners as well, and as you went through your journey, something that stood out for you?
I think for me it's definitely been, and I hate, because you hear about imposter syndrome all the time, especially among women. And I'm somebody that's always acted confident even when I'm not. But I, just like anyone else, suffer from imposter syndrome. And I think something that I have definitely learned, which was the turning moment that I was talking about earlier, when my boss made this huge mistake, and that's when I was like, okay, if he can make that mistake, I can open my own firm. It's not being afraid to take risks. And I think that has been the longer I've had my firm, and the more I've dealt with clients, and the more confident I've become in taking those risks, the more I've been able to serve my clients, because I know that they're in good hands with me. I know the service I provide. I know the service my team provides. If I turn that client away because, maybe it's a complex issue or whatever the situation is, I might be sending them to an attorney that might not care as much as I do, or care as much as my team does. So while that sounds silly, I think having that confidence and not worrying about, how many years I've done this specific type of transaction or thing, knowing that I have the ability to help that person. Like franchising is something that we've really gotten into. And we've become really good at it. And I have fun with it. I enjoy it. And now it's become one of our biggest practice areas.
Yeah, very cool, and very powerful message to share that vulnerably, because it's something that I'm sure, as you mentioned, we all, there's that breaking point is, as you gain more experience, confidence can roll with that. Also the other way, if things don't necessarily go certain ways, that your confidence goes backwards. So very interesting to talk about that, especially for entrepreneurs, to acknowledge that that's something that will be ongoing, and just beautiful, because you're also saying, like, to look through the lens of how important it is for you to be able to serve someone, that what you bring to the table, and how it's important for you to serve them to the best ability, and how that might not be out there for them. So almost saying, like, I'm willing to go to the end for
it.
Yeah,
exactly.
So cool.
I heard somebody, I don't know where I heard it, but it was to the effect of courage and bravery isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. And I'm sure we've all heard that. It's true though. Our associate almost covered her first hearing the other day. It ended up working out, but she was over preparing and like nervous, and I still get nervous and I still over prepare. And I told her, I was like, listen, like, the day that you're not afraid,
Yeah.
Like, that's when I'd be worried.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're missing something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you definitely, at some point, you also got to say, I've done everything I can. And then you go in and you know, a little bit of Jesus take the wheel with, with the confidence, of course, but to go in and then from there, just know it also that confidence build and that you can say, I'm going to crush this. And own it.
Look, my first franchise client, this is a true story. I got them in December of 2019. I still remember the hotel on A1A here by the beach that I was at working from at the time when I took this consultation call. And they were like, listen, like, we really want to do a franchise. We want to start a franchise. We're a X-industry type of company. We've got 5 corporate locations. We've already talked to a couple franchise attorneys, but we really liked your website, whatever. So they give me their pitch. I give them mine. And then they ask me the dreaded question, have you done this before?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, can I cuss on this show?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, you should have told me that a while ago. I'm like,
let it fly.
Okay, I'm like, well, shit, I've done franchisee work. I've never set up a franchise on the franchisor side. That's a completely different beast.
Yeah.
Because it's federally regulated, and then each of the 50 states have their own rules on it.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, listen, no, I haven't. I've never done it before, but I've represented a bunch of franchisees and I know my shit and I will study the hell out of it and I will do an amazing job if you give me the opportunity. And they were like, all right, we really like you. We're going to take a risk on you. That was 2019. One of the transactions that I will be working on, even on my maternity leave, is the sale of 70% of their company for an ungodly amount. This will be the largest transaction I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm handling this. They're like, yeah, you've been with us for the last 4 years.
That's so cool.
You've seen us grow from 2 million to 9 point something million last year.
Yeah.
They're like, you're handling this for us. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
What an awesome reward.
And that was, to me, like, to this day, I love those guys. Like, they took a risk on me. I've done a great job for them, and it helped build that confidence that I now have. Yeah.
So awesome. And someone taking a chance on you and you taking also an honest chance with yourself to be that communication of saying how you approach that, I think is also awesome for those who have perhaps not been in that position yet, or maybe one day will find themselves in a position, because that's a question that can come out. Have you done this? Because for everyone, there's going to be that one first time they got to make over that hump, right?
Yeah. So, I was watching this movie the other day with my wife, with Michael J. Fox from, God, it was like 1980 something.
Yeah.
I'd never even heard of it before. It was called like, I don't know, The Secret to Success or something. So corny.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as the movie starts, you're like, oh, this is an 80s movie.
Yeah.
So we're watching it.
It sounds like my wife making fun of the 80s here.
Yeah. Well, look, I was born I'm aging myself, but I don't really care. I'm Latin. We don't age. Yeah. The movie came, I want to say it was like 83 or something like that. But anyway, Michael J. Fox is like this really hungry financial guy, and he sneaks his way into his uncle's company, and his uncle's company makes him start in the filing room or whatever. Yeah. By the end, of course, you can imagine he ends up like taking over the company. Sorry if I blew the punchline for anybody who wants to watch it.
Yeah.
But there's a point in the movie where he's like, well, how am I going to get the experience if you don't give me the opportunity? Because everyone kept asking him, have you done this before? And that happens in the legal profession too, when you're going in any job that you're going for interviews. Yeah. And I think the question isn't, have you done this before? It's, do you find yourself capable and competent of doing this? And I think when you find it in yourself that you know you have that grit, letting that person know, letting the other person know, I can do this. And if somebody is thinking, listening to this podcast, thinking, I'm thinking about making the leap from Canada to Florida and starting that management company or whatever. Yeah. At some point, you got to just say, fuck it and do it.
You got to go for it.
You can't think about it.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what's a cool concept as well that I've come across and I've talked to entrepreneurs about as well is that there's been certain structures that has been really successful where they're bringing on people that have had those experiences, that then you're coming in and almost I can call it I'm short on the word now, apprenticeship. where you're there and you're actually going through the transaction from bottom to start to finish. Those are all also awesome as well, to then say, I've been alongside someone, but you might not have that experience or not have had that and be in that position. So really cool to hear as well, to how you can all approach it, and very cool how that went through your journey as well.
I love being an entrepreneur. I really do. Even on the worst days where I'm like talking shit and saying I'm gonna go work for some big company as general counsel. I'm full of shit. I love being my own boss and not answering to anybody. More important than that, what we talked about at the very beginning is choosing your own clients, right? Being able to choose who you work with on a daily basis. Like that power, I'm not giving that away. Because you know who you vibe with, who you don't. Your no's have created your awesome yeses. Yes. I love that. That's so cool. I love that. I'm going to borrow that. Take it. I'm sure. I don't know where I got it from, but totally. Created your awesome yeses. And so cool. And well, I want to let the listeners know, where can they find you online? Our website is pretty easy to remember, harder to spell. FloridaEntrepreneurLaw.com. I mean, you pretty much can't get easier than that. That's it. There's 3 R's in entrepreneurs, guys. Even lawyers get it wrong. So check your spelling. But it's very true, actually. One of those words I always stumble over. So right. I won a spelling bee when I was 10, and I ended up in the Miami Herald. So nice. But I've spelled it wrong myself, actually. But FloridaEntrepreneurLaw.com. Go to our website, book a consult. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on and sharing more knowledge, as you always do. And it's been a pleasure to being able to work with you and clients that we have recommended who have been super happy. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys, and thank you. And that's it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of What Would It Cost Florida. Until the next one.